Good evening, G's. I hope you're all doing awesome. Welcome back to the show. Of course, I'm your host, Shanghai Pete, your very good buddy in the mix. Hope everyone has survived the week more or less intact. As you can likely imagine, I barely managed once again. It's been a pretty slow week for video games and a rather busy week for almost everything else, so naturally, I'm super glad I only cover games, good God. That being said, there is some stuff to talk about, and it is the weekend, so let's get deep inside and have a good laugh at our favorite idiot industry. Just time for a quick recap of the week, which of course was filled with all manner of slop, idiocy, and emotional roller coasters. And speaking of the latter, would you look at that, a positive story. For anyone who is a fan of stuff like Ghostwire Tokyo, Hi-Fi Rush, or the Evil Within games, good news. Yes, no, you heard that right, good news. Krafton, the publisher of PUBG, which I guess, poor them, because of Dr. Disrespect, I will forever associate that game with PDF files. Krafton has swooped in at the 0 hour to save Tango Gameworks from the oblivion Microsoft consigned them to right after acquiring them. That's right, foiled again, Microsoft, you goddamn monsters. In fairness, I do have to say that we don't know for sure who was the impetus behind this rescue. Theoretically, it could have been Microsoft, who were desperately trying to shop around a deal to make sure Tango and all their employees were taken care of, but I doubt it. Not really the Microsoft style, is it? Considering how well received Hi-Fi Rush was, Microsoft's choice to just fuck them into the ground anyway. While tragic, wasn't particularly shocking, I don't think. Fortunately, Krafton has said that they do plan a smooth transition, which will keep not only the entirety of the team on, but also keep the Hi-Fi Rush IP alive and on as many systems as possible. Great news all around. Let's hope the reality is as good as the picture being painted in the situation right now. Next up, a bit of Nintendo news. While it has been confirmed we'll be getting the Switch 2, the Nintendo Super Switch as I prefer to call it, sometime next year, Nintendo themselves have been characteristically tight-lipped about any additional details. Considering the Switch itself has had the longest console life of I think any system Nintendo has ever put out, it's pretty reasonable for people to be wondering where the fuck the next one is. Either that or maybe they're just tired of their current console's available library being limited by tech that's almost 20 years old. Maybe both. In any case, while I think we are all expecting or maybe hoping for a Switch 2 reveal during Nintendo's customary September Direct, developers have now been told not to expect an actual release before April of 2025. And that's fine. I think an April or late spring release would still be in line with a reveal announcement in the fall, so no reason to worry. I'm a little disappointed that it sounds like they will miss a March or early spring release, but providing we get our hands on it in the first half of 2025, I think we'll all manage to survive. Moving on, in what has come as a shock to hopefully nobody, the Borderlands movie, which never, at any point, sounded or looked at all like a good idea, has predictably flopped. Good. Fine. Can we now, can we stop doing this, please? Can we move on? Okay, if forced, I will grudgingly admit that while there may be a small handful of video game movies that aren't an utter misery and unceasing torment to sit through, there's only one that is actually good. And that's Mortal Kombat from 1995. I'll leave it up to you guys to decide in what context I'm using the word good. I guess also the recent Mario movie wasn't bad either. I recommend it for kids or adults who are so high that simply making it into the movie theater presents a serious challenge. Finally this week, the sad tale of Helldivers 2 devs fumbling the bag. After shocking, I think, pretty much everyone with a launch that saw it rocketing to the top of Steam and gaming charts everywhere, the sequel that no one really expected has blindly careened itself into almost every possible bump in the road since it debuted in February. Unpopular decisions with regard to PSN, gameplay tweaks that left many fans infuriated, poor balancing, nerfs to fun as well as weapons, and the most recent escalation of freedom have all seen Helldivers 2 active players dropping 27 floors into the basement. This one is a real bummer because the enthusiasm and fan interest in the game came out of nowhere. It was fucking awesome, and it surprised, I think, probably everybody. This change and overconfident devs fucking over the players, I think, slightly less unexpected, but equally sad. For all the Helldivers fans out there, I hope the devs get their act together and fix your game before the amount of players drops below a critical threshold and their publisher, Sony, busts in to try to get everybody fired. Lastly, just a quick note about what I'm playing at the moment. If you are a Fallout fan and haven't tried Fallout London yet, you really should give it a shot. I've played about 8-10 hours of it maybe, and I'm really enjoying it. It has a serious survival horror, almost sort of Metro series vibe that I'm really fucking with. The overall quality is insane, and the design is easily the equal or honestly probably maybe superior to anything the original devs did. I didn't really like Fallout 4 nearly as much as I liked 3 or New Vegas, but so far London is fucking great. This makes Starfield look like a baby's game from 10 years ago. Once again, it has fallen to independent devs and an indie team of people that actually care about what they're making to show the so-called pros how it's done. If this sounds like something you're interested in, I suggest grabbing it soon, because if history is any indicator, we've got maybe a month or two before Bethesda busts in Kool-Aid Man style and ruins it. Moving on, for our main story tonight, since there's nothing of any real importance to talk about, I thought we'd do something fun and a little bit different. I was just getting ready to record this as a shorter episode with just a weekly recap, but then, I stumbled upon this VGC article, hands-on with the Silent Hill 2 remake. Oh, shit. It's actually kind of a long article for a gaming journalist anyway, so I thought we could go over it together like many of those other professional YouTubers do. I've never tried this before, so it might suck. Y'all be sure to tell me if it does in the comments. Alright, here we go. This just dropped from VGC. Hands-on, Silent Hill 2 feels like it's getting the Capcom-style remake treatment it deserves. Oh, really? See, right off rip, this kind of thing immediately makes me skeptical and think that the person who wrote this might not actually have any fucking idea what they're talking about. Really? The Capcom-style treatment it deserves? I mean, technically not impossible, of course, but I don't know, that's quite a reach for a fucking headline. Anyway, Blooper Team's remake nails the atmosphere of the original game. Again, pretty bold statement. Alright. Modern remakes of classic survival horror games have a gold standard, Capcom's remake of Resident Evil 2. Again, who is this? Jordan Midler? Assuming that's an actual person and not AI. You're really making me question your credentials right off the riff here. Like, alright, Capcom's remake of Resident Evil 2 is very good, but the gold standard, I don't know. At the moment, I can't think of anything necessarily better than it, but gold standard, it just seems pretty ambitious. Anyway, it'd be of great relief to Silent Hill fans then that we were quickly reminded of the current standard bearer as we played the Silent Hill 2 remake for the first time. Bloober Team's take on the game essentially serves two purposes. It's an apology, it's an apology from Konami for the state it's left the franchise in for years, and it's a reintroduction to the series for a new generation of players who have only heard it spoken about in whispers. First of all, it's an apology from Konami. The idea that Konami would ever care about their customers or the games they make, really, enough to apologize for any of it is just ludicrous. We wanted to evoke this feeling of, oh, I remember that, even though it's not the same thing. Oh, God. Oh, I remember that, even though it's not the same thing? Oh, God, it's supposed to be as similar to the same thing as possible, right? It plays differently. It's structured in a different way, dude. It's structured in a different way. What counts, in our opinion, is the moment that players think they're playing the original, because that's what stays with you. I mean, like, I get that, but already I'm like, why is it structured in a different way? What is this? That's inherently the challenge at the heart of all these remakes. Do you make something structurally the same, but gussied up, what is this, 1852? But gussied up to modern aesthetic standards, or do you take the composite parts of what makes a game iconic and reapply them to the modern standards of the medium? Oh, I can answer that for you, actually. What you do, if you're delusional enough to even attempt a remake of something this iconic, is, yes, you do make something structurally the same. In my opinion, at least, a modern remake should be almost identical to the original, except for you go in and you update the things that have fallen out of favor. You update the graphics, and maybe, considering a lot of old survival horror games use tank controls, maybe you update those. Maybe you update the quality of the music. But otherwise, don't fucking touch it, please. If you're gonna take the composite parts of what, in your opinion, makes a game iconic, and then reapply them to the modern standards of the medium, one, who's to say that you're right about which parts of it make it iconic? And two, who's to say that you're capable of reapplying them with the same magic? Every single part of a game that is considered a classic or iconic is crucial to its identity. The problem starts when we have these new devs going in there and thinking that they know better than the original guys who made it and start ripping shit out and switching it around to try to reapply them. No. please have some humility and just leave well enough alone and only update the things that need to be updated. Again, just my personal opinion on how remakes should be approached, especially remakes of game this iconic, but, you know, feel free to disagree, let me know in the comments. Moving on. For Silent Hill 2, so far the game feels like something that's faithfully evoking the spirit of the original wrapped in a satisfying and scary modern survival horror. Alright. Our demo consists of the game's first 3 hours, that's pretty good. As we arrived in the hills, made our way down the path to the cemetery, and then into the center of the town, the game nails its tone from the jump. Again, obviously I can't dispute this, but if that's really the case, great. Following James down the steep hillside into the wooded area ahead of the cemetery, we were reminded of Alan Wake 2's imposing forest and foreboding atmosphere. I mean, maybe Alan Wake 2 should have reminded you of Silent Hill 2's imposing forest and foreboding atmosphere, but okay. The descent into the fog, this time an atmospheric tool rather than a mechanical crutch, give players both new and old a sense of what they're getting into. The game is played in third person, controls similarly to the Resident Evil remakes or the aforementioned Alan Wake 2. Again, that's all fine, I don't really have a problem with that. I'd like a first person option, but otherwise, sounds fine. We were soon stalking through the town with nothing but an old piece of wood with nails on to ward off the shambling creatures that screeched at us as we ran from building to building. James, the game's protagonist, is now much more agile than in the original, able to dodge and counter enemy attacks. I mean, alright, fine. I don't have a problem with that. The timing isn't impossible, but you'll still have to keep your guard up. We also found ourselves running around with a red halo of impending death clogging up the screen, following our failed attempts to dodge properly. That's a weird way to describe that, but I guess it just says that your health is indicated by a screen tint. Okay. While Silent Hill 2 nails the tone of the original, I should probably say while the Silent Hill 2 remake nails the tone of the original, we were somewhat worried beforehand about how some of the original scares would translate into the modern era. Yeah, you and me both, little buddy. In the eyes of some fans, it's a can't-win situation. You either change things, subsequently annoying the hardcore fan base, or you retain everything, cheesiness and all, and potentially turn off new fans. Again, in my opinion, this is not a rhetorical question. This is an easily answered actual question. It's not a can't-win scenario. You do not change things at all. That's what you do. See, this is the kind of thing where it shows these devs hubris in their attitude towards this, right? Like, what makes you think you know better than the people who made Silent Hill 2 originally? Who's to say that the cheesiness and all, as this article puts it, is not something that's inherent to the game? I would argue, as I argue in my videos about the Final Fantasy VII Remake, that everything is important. Almost everything in these iconic games was done for a reason. You don't know better than the original devs. Trust their judgment. We're not here because we want your judgment, Bloober team. We're here because we like the judgment and the choices made by the original Team Silent on this game. Please understand that. Anyway, the article continues. That's the most interesting aspect of remaking a game like this. In the original, the fixed camera allows the developers to hide threats. Not only this, the old era of consoles didn't have the power to show all the things that exist in the space. A big part of the horror was created in the player's mind, so recreating that feeling is a challenge. On this, he's totally right. How you deal with that, again, I'm not sure. We need to expand on the design of the enemies. The mannequin, for example, has more mechanics. She can hide, she can surprise the player. Okay, that sounds fine, I guess. And then they continue. Can she ever? It's an unedifying experience getting caught by a jump scare in the middle of a packed room with other journalists playing the same demo. But more than once, we were caught on the back foot as the mannequin charged out of a dimly lit cupboard at us. Okay, jump scare, great, fine. I don't have anything too mean to say about that. Every room we entered in the highly detailed complex featured at the end of the demo was filled with misdirects and places for enemies to hide. Even in rooms in which we felt like we could trust that we were alone, every decrepit wardrobe or jacket hanging on a coat rack had us on edge. As it should. Okay. We mentioned at the beginning that Silent Hill 2 is not only a remake for hardcore fans who have been left out in the cold for years, I mean for decades I think at this point, but it's also an introduction to the series for a new generation. With that in mind, there will probably be more than a few players asking if they need to play the non-existent Silent Hill 1 remake before diving into this. Lead producer, I have no idea how to fuck pronounce that, laughs as we broach the subject of starting with the sequel. If you're asking why I start with Silent Hill 2, the decision wasn't ours to be made. Konami wanted to revitalize the franchise with this one since it's the most well-known and considered to be the best. Silent Hill 1 is my personal favorite, but I would not argue that the 2 is considered to be the best and the most well-known. I think that's probably right. It worked out for the best because Silent Hill 2 fits what Bloober Team can do the best. For our employees, this is their absolute dream project. Everybody wins. I mean, again, I hope that's true. I mean, we'll see in how it's been treated if this was actually their employees' dream project. As we played through the game's opening, we couldn't help imagining what playing through these exact sequences will be like for the most dedicated fans of the franchise when the game is released in a few short weeks. While they'll know the original game like the back of their hand, every deviation, every reimagined cutscene, and crucially every location that's now in stunning 4K will either be a moment of relief or justification for their doubts. Again, true enough. We often asked if the pressure from the fans got to us. To some extent, it definitely did. Good. Fuck you, good. We know every trailer and every asset we release is so closely watched, every second directed into little parts. It's hard. We haven't experienced it before. Our games weren't as high in people's regard before. I mean, that's true. If you guys don't know, Team Blooper, they're an interesting one because of all the games they've released, I'd say maybe one or two, like the Medium. I thought the Medium was really good, but almost all the other shit that they've made is it ranges from mid to really kind of weak. So I think it's still a toss-up. The thing we always say is that the biggest pressure was coming from ourselves. No, your biggest pressure should be coming from your customers, the people whose money you are asking for. If we weren't making this game, we would be those people on Reddit checking every frame. Jesus Christ. Admitting to be a Reddit poster, that's wild. It's enriched the experience, really. After every trailer, we get a lot of feedback. Oh, I'll bet you do. Negative or positive, we don't really care as long as we can take something out of it to make the game better. I mean, all right, I both believe that and think that that's also obviously solid design theory. He goes on to say, there are things that people have noticed that we didn't notice before, and it's impacted some of our decisions. Not all of them. In some cases, we've already tested something they suggested, but it was a case-by-case scenario. This is good. I mean, even if it's not true, it's good to at least say stuff like this because it gives the appearance that they actually care what their customers think. So whether actual design practice or just good comms, in either case, good job. The article goes on to say, we came away from Silent Hill 2 far more confident about the remake than we were before we played it. The gameplay feels great, the game is graphically impressive, and the atmosphere of the original has been replicated perfectly. Again, perfectly is a pretty wild adjective. We'll see. It's an inherently different experience in the transition between fixed camera to third person, but at no point does it feel like the heart of Silent Hill 2 has been lost. I mean, it's quite an ambitious statement. Crucially, for the health of the series, again, I don't know about you guys, but like I feel like referring to Silent Hill as a series is just kind of insulting. Sure, technically it is a series, but anything after 4 I just completely disregard. Anyway, crucially for the health of the series, Silent Hill 2 feels like it'll be exactly the kind of shot in the arm that will bring the series back into vogue. Am I the only one who doesn't want it to be back in vogue? Just give us a nice remake and then fuck off again, please. The Resident Evil remake comparisons will likely be inescapable, you're right about that, but is that a bad thing when Capcom's latest efforts have been just as genre-defining for modern survival horrors as both Resident Evil and Silent Hill were in the genre's nascent days? I don't know if I'd go so far as to say that again. You guys, survival horror experts, you let me know if you think that's true in the comments down below. But anyway, that's the article. What do you guys think about this? To me, it just sounds like a Glaze sesh. I wouldn't be surprised if this was actually just paid marketing for it, but you never know. If the actual game is even half as good as this article is making it sound like it is, it'll probably be pretty decent. At least I desperately hope so. But what about y'all? Are you convinced by this probably not entirely AI article? Does it give you hope, or does it sound a little bit too much like a manufactured Glaze sesh paid in full by Konami advertising? Let us know in the comments down below, as well as if you like this format for the video or if you think it sucks. And we will catch you next week by hook or by crook.
Woke up, smoke up, blunt, then I pass out. Pass out. Woke up, what up, smoke up, blunt, then I'm back down. Back down. What? Woke up, smoke up, blunt, then I pass out. Pass out.